So now let's look at changing envelope colors. So there are two ways that I do this sometimes, and I'll walk you through both of them. But the first way is fairly simple. So we're going to zoom in on our envelope. Let's see. Okay. And then Photoshop has this fun object selection tool now, which makes it really easy. So to use this, just hit the object selection tool, and then you're going to click and drag a rectangle around your envelope. And Photoshop eventually will select your envelope. You will see that it has also selected the shadow, and we don't want it to select the shadow. So let's just zoom in on that. And what I like to do, okay, it also did something funky over here, but that's okay. So what I like to do is take your quick selection tool and make sure it's on this minus symbol up here. And then all you're going to do is deselect. I'm clicking and dragging along this shadow to deselect the shadow. And you may be able to do it up here as well. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just try to get it as close as possible. I'm going to go ahead and leave it as that. And then the next step that you're going to take is to come over here to your layers panel and go down to this little icon. And you're going to create either a new hue saturation layer or a color balance layer. And I use both of these, just depending on if I can get the color with one layer or the other. But let's go ahead and do color balance. And you can see that it's created a little mask, a clipping mask of the envelope. So it's only going to adjust that selection. Let's go ahead, let's say I wanted it to be a little brighter. Okay, we can zoom out if we want to. Or let's say we want it to be kind of a purpley color. Just have fun with it and see where it takes you. So let's go ahead and see the difference. That's not much of a difference, but let's see the difference with this. Okay. So that's kind of fun. So that is the first way that I change the color of envelopes in these styled stock photos. Something I do want to point out before we move on to the second way is that if you need to add a hue saturation layer above this color balance layer, you will need to clip it onto that shape again. So just like we did in previous videos, we're going to hover between these layers and press the Option or Alt key until the icon changes, and then click, and that will make this layer be applied to that mask, if that makes sense. So from there we can change it even more. You just have to watch out because sometimes it can get a little, it looks a little odd with these lighter areas, the highlighted areas, and you can also colorize it. So I like those kind of pastel colors. Just something to play around with. Just play around with it until you like it, and until you find the envelope color that you want to use for the design. And let's move on to the second way I change envelope colors. Okay, so the second way I change my envelope color doesn't actually involve the image itself or any of my layers over here. What I do is I go to Google and I Google open your flap envelope, and I find the color that best represents what I'm trying to show the client and go from there. So I'll choose just for example purposes, I'll choose this and I'll save it to my computer, and then I'll bring it into Photoshop. So I actually have a couple saved. I keep a mockup tools folder readily available on my computer, and I have several different envelope flaps and envelope colors available to use at any given time. So I would recommend doing that. But let's go ahead and use this one. And all you have to do is click and drag it into Photoshop. And from there, you'll see that this particular photo has a white background. So I'm going to go ahead and place it, but then I'll need to rasterize the object. And the best way, fastest way that I do it is select the eraser tool, click, and rasterize the smart object. And from there, I can do my magic wand tool and select the white areas and delete those. Or if your photo already has a blank background, that's great too. Come over here, select the white. All right, I think there's a little bit of white over here. All right, so you get the gist. And then from here, I'm gonna resize it. Sorry. You can go up to Edit, Transform, and Scale. I clearly don't do that very often, so what I do is Command T for Transform, and then I just resize it and put it over the envelope in the photo. And that way I can get a very good representation of what that color envelope is going to be without having to go through adjusting color balances, adding another layer, and all that fun stuff. So I just click enter to place it, and you still have the shadows that are available on the photo itself. But this is just a simple and easy way to change your envelope color without having to have much Photoshop knowledge. Sometimes your image will have a main envelope or an RSVP envelope that already has postage on it, and I just want to show you what I do in those cases. It's not quite as realistic looking, but it does give your client a good idea of what it's going to look like in their proof. So I come over here and create a rectangle. I'm going to zoom into this RSVP envelope really quick and just create a rectangle the size of that envelope. And you might need to rotate it a little bit when you're finished, but let's select a color. And then I'm going to change the opacity just a little bit so I can see those stamps come through, and go over here to my eraser tool, and that's E on your keyboard, and you're going to have to rasterize the object again, and then you're just going to erase where you see the stamp. And I'm not going to do it perfectly right now because I think you can get the idea, but you do want to get the shadow visible as well. So this little shadow that's underneath the postage stamp. I'm going to show you an example really quick. This is a proof that I sent to a client, and as you can see, let me show you. The mock-up does not have a backer, which I will show you in a minute how I do that. And the envelopes are white. So I actually use that method of pulling in an envelope that I found online and put it over top of the envelope in the mock-up. And then this one I changed with that rectangle tool. So as you can see, it's not perfect. It doesn't look quite as realistic, but it did give the client the chance to look at it and say, yes, I want to go with a light pink envelope against the green main envelope. Or if she wanted to change it, we could change it at that point. But next I'm going to show you how I put these backer pieces in. Like this is the back of the RSVP card, and this is the back of the invitation. So I will show you that in just a minute.